It's me again. I am Elisa Grizzi. I will introduce myself again. I am a tech reporter at Politico. And this panel, I think, is perhaps on one of the hottest topics on global tech regulation right now. And that is to ban or not to ban social media for minors. Show of hands, who would say that we should ban social media for minors? Okay, I would say it's about half. And who's a firm opponent of social media bans? That is a lot less hands, for the record. So we have a wonderful panel, again, with us today. And Martin Harris-Hess, he's the head of the Minors Protection Online unit at DG Connect at the European Commission. Sonia Livingstone, a professor at the London School of Economics and Political Science. And Siltje van Achter, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Flemish Minister for Brussels and Media at the Government of Flanders. Thank you all so much for being here. My first question would be for Martin. Martin, it seems a ban is on the horizon. Last week, I was in Cyprus, and the Cypriot minister told me EU countries now want the EU to do something about this. I know your panel of experts has yet to reach its conclusion. But before we get into that, is it really possible? Is an EU social media ban for minors something that you could make happen?
Legally or practically?
Both.
I mean, legally, there is a possibility. You see it already in some member states, in other parts of the world. There is a way of introducing age restrictions. I wouldn't call it a ban. Ban is so emotionally laden. I think it's age-related restrictions to accessing certain services. And I wanted to ask anyway, later maybe over a drink, the audience who was in favor of a ban, what exactly is the service you want to restrict the access to? So it's possible. I think it will face practical difficulties that we see now in Australia, where they have introduced social media age delay, I think they call it officially, which is based on account creation. So not even accessing the service, it's just like delaying the ability to create an account for a social media platform. And they are, like, the first kind of experience with this measure shows there are a lot of practical difficulties you have to encounter and you need to deal with. But where will is, there's a way, so I would say.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, your government, I think, is one of the governments that now is supporting such restrictions. Have you considered these difficulties? And you can elaborate a little bit on your positions, because I think it is a slightly different, more nuanced one than other governments.
Well, like many countries, we had also the debate in Flanders or in Belgium on the impact of social media on minors. There are positive aspects, I really agree on that, and there are also negative effects, and then we look at the harmful content, the addictive design of social media platforms, and so yes, we also had a debate that's going on, and a lot of the debate focalizes on the ban. It's, there's not so much nuances, it's always we talk about the ban, and especially after Australia introduced the ban, we were thinking what is the best way to protect minors and to have safer online social media platforms, because that's the objective. And so, yes, we wanted an answer, how can we protect our children best? Is that with a ban or not? And so before Christmas, we came up with an action plan in Flanders on online safety. And it has two pillars. One is a pillar around media literacy, giving also stronger support to parents, so that they can have parental control, which is really important, that they talk to their children, because 1 out of 2 parents does not follow what their children are doing online, which is not acceptable. We should really work on that. So one pillar on media literacy, on resilience. But a second pillar, we agreed on that we want to have the harmful practices out. We want to have safer social media. And of course, the rules that exist, the European rules, they must be enforced. And the platforms must take responsibility, because the responsibility lies within with the platforms. So that is our main goal, our first goal, that we want to have safe online, safe social media for minors.
So what would be the harmful platforms, or are you thinking harmful practices?
Within that, we see that, for instance, regarding TikTok, or the Commission already said, like TikTok, you have an addictive design. We also know that the platforms, they say, we are only accessible for kids as of 13 years old. But in Flanders, we know that, in general, on average, children have their first social media account at the age of 10 years old and 3 months. So much younger than the 13 years old. So we agreed within the Flemish government, we will make a decree that says, if a platform is harmful, if it's not living up to the standards that the DSA has put forward, at least we want the enforcement of the age limit of 13 years old, so that our youngest children are at least not on these platforms. Our first goal is to have safe social media, but if it's not safe enough, at least the youngest kid should not be on there. And it gives a clear signal to the parents, because actually the age limit is not known, is not respected, is actually, people are not really aware of it, first, but also a clear signal to the Commission that they must enforce the DSA, and if they see that one of the large platforms is not abiding with Article 28 of the DSA, that at least they must also see that the enforcement of the age limit is done.
I want to bring in Sonia at this stage, and I mean, you mentioned parental controls, and I assume everyone on this panel is a parent or knows a parent, and is probably not a minor. And I do find interesting in this debate that it's all parents, and parents want to know what their kids are up to, and they want to make sure that they're safe, which is a noble goal for sure. But I do wonder if it's a bit, lopsided, and I think child rights organizations will actually speak against bans. They're not in favor, whereas tech companies are largely in favor of them. So how do you explain this peculiar situation?
So a child rights position absolutely begins by consulting children, and children are being consulted, and not enough, not just now, not represented here in this room. And when they are consulted, they are generally very clear. They do not want a ban. They do want safe services. They do want age-appropriate services, and they do want support when something goes wrong. And that's what they call for. I think that is pretty close to what Article 28 of the DSA says. In short, and the reason they say that is not because they are as upset as anyone else about the risks. They are actually the first to tell you about all the things that can go wrong, and they're very clear what the harms are, but they also find benefits. And so, for example, the EU Kids Online Network has just recently surveyed 27,000 European children, and we can see that the most common use of social media is talking to their friends, followed by watching videos, listening to music, talking to their family, and doing schoolwork. So this is not a terrible list of things that they're doing, and children are asking both first, this is what I want to do, this is good, isn't it? Isn't this what we want to support? But also, if you introduce a ban, how am I going to see my friends? How am I going to, relax, chill, do some homework? Half of children in the Global Kids Online research are using social media also for their news. We have kind of pivoted our society in a way so that social media is the first port of call for lots of activities children go for. Support, they look for help there, they find validation, especially when they are from minority or kind of disadvantaged groups. They support each other. They feel that they have some kind of civic role. It's not just what individuals want, but it's their space, their culture. So they don't want that just cancelled, taken away, and if it is to be over their heads, what are we going to put in its place?
But then how do you explain the fact that tech companies are also, for example, Meta, who you recently said is not doing enough to keep under-13s off its platform, they are in support of a digital age of majority. I think TikTok also is not at least opposed to it, as far as I know. Why are they in favor of it? Is it just an easy way out?
So I think children and the tech companies are saying something very different. So I think tech companies might be saying, and I can't speak for them, that if we have a limit, then they don't have to be responsible for children on their services anymore, and they can just get on with whatever they want to do to maximize their profit. Children are saying they want a way to be part of the digital age, they want a way to connect with others, and they want some agency in creating that space, but they want it to be safe, and they want the problems to be removed.
Martin, I want to come back to you, and let's get practical once again. So what would that actually look like? Let's say EU countries say, yes, please, Commission, go forward. Let's say the panel of experts, which is supposed to give a recommendation by the end of July, I think, says, yes, go for it. So what could that look like, and what would your role be in that? How would you also deal with the different ages, which are still maybe TBD amongst countries?
First of all, at the outset, I can only speculate because, as you said, no decision has been made, and we are actually keenly awaiting the recommendations. The reason we set up this panel is precisely to get expert advice from a huge variety of experts, from child rights groups, privacy advocates, consumer protection advocates, so it was, medical doctors from all fields, psychologists. So it was the first two meetings, but it still is a very, very interesting and informative process that hopefully informs and influences the decision-making that comes out of the institution. So I can speculate only based on the discussion we had in the panel where we listened to the experts very carefully. I think there is consensus that even if you go for a ban, there needs to be something between the floor and 18. So a protective environment. Sonia started talking about, or the minister as well, about making the experience age-appropriate and safe. I think that there is your point about why tech companies might support this. I'm not in the decision-making process of tech companies, or again, I can only speculate, but one speculation would be that they say, okay, what we do is we cut off a certain user base, and of course we lose revenue there, but we don't have to do anything above. There's no safety measures we have to put in place that might be costly. So they would then hide behind the ban to actually make a safe experience. And this is not what we want. We want a safe experience for children. In fact, actually, we want a safe experience for every user. But with our child protection measures, I think we should go beyond simply just looking. There is a cut-off age. If we go for it in debate, then the debate would be what is actually the right age. But there needs to be something between this floor and 18 as well. And I think, if I could speculate, I think what might come out of the recommendations, at least from the expert, from what I've heard so far, is not just the binary ban, yes or no, as you phrased it at the outset for this panel, but what else do we want to do? How can we create a very safe environment for our children?
So you mean some acceptance that a floor is needed, which is not the 13, plus then more guidance or calls for more regulation for that middle band? Is that what you're trying to say? Speculating.
Yeah, as I said, I think if you read the political debate, and you were in Cyprus as well, I think in the political debate there is some form of ban, or again, I don't like the word ban, some form of age restriction coming. If you listen to Macron, to the ministers from a huge number of member states. Whether this is now 13, 14, 15, 16, or whatever, I really don't know. I mean, if you listen to experts, they don't agree either whether there is and frankly, it's about the majority of the user. The 14-year-old, some 14-year-olds might be very mature to access this, others might not. So I think this, I really don't want to speculate, but the point I would like to make is, whatever this ban is, and if there is one at all, we need to have the discussion, what is the environment we want to see for those who can access the service? And it can be nothing. It has to be some form of protection. We have already very useful tools, both other panelists have mentioned in the DSA, but maybe we need more. So, and this is a debate that we are having following the recommendations.
Wow, sounds like I'll have a busy couple of years. Very exciting. Yes, Minister, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I wanted to comment because the age of 13, we did not just pick it also at random. First, it's the age that is already in the terms and conditions, but also our National Superior Health Council, to say it right in English, they also consulted a lot of experts and made a report, and they stated, in general, of course, children, they're not all the same, but in general, at the age of 13 or under the age of 13, children are not really mature to emotionally or cognitively deal with harmful content or addictive design. And so we based our age also on a report from the Health Council, and try to talk also to the Youth Council, because indeed it is important to also talk to them. So before adopting, it's in our decree, which is not adopted yet, it needs to still go the whole process. It's the first step that we agreed with the government. We also talked to the Youth Association in Flanders to know their stand of view, and indeed we have the same. They're very clear. They don't want a ban at the age of 15 or 16 because they want to have their social contract. They want to have access to information, but with an age limit at 13 years old, it's something they can rely on. And we want to have the age. What we see in practice, that children now at 10 years old have their first social media account without so often parental guidance. We want to have the debate on that, and we want to have the age limit higher.
Yes, Sonia.
So I wanted to say something about why the right age is so difficult.
Yeah, difficult.
And I think there are a couple of reasons that just complicate the job of the dear colleagues on both sides. I'm an academic, so I can do complexity. So two reasons. One is that social media has become a really prominent route by which all kinds of things happen in society. And we want the good things for children to start as young as possible. We're glad when children are in touch with their friends. We want them to be able to, the child who needs help to be able to find it as early as possible. We want kids to engage with the news and feel part of their community as early as possible. So we want them in some of those spaces young. But we also want to protect them as long as possible. And we don't want children actually of any age being approached by random strangers for improper process, or dangerous purposes. We don't want children of any age going to communities that are about self-harm or whatever. So we want to empower children young, and we want to protect them as long as we can. So I think that really makes it hard. And then just to make a kind of obvious point, children of different ages engage with technology in different ways. So the risks that younger children report more are seeing some embarrassing or difficult content, and sometimes being approached in ways they don't know how to deal with. But basically, it's kind of more bullying, and it's more... But the 17-year-olds, I think we should also be worried about, because they are the ones who are, the object of sexual extortion, or, being encouraged to visit suicide sites. Or it's not like it all gets great after 16, and indeed into adulthood. So the experience at different ages is also a different thing. And yet, those 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds are coming up for the vote, right? They need to be citizens.
Definitely.
Yes. Minister, there was something that you said before. You said that these restrictions that you're now going for are a clear signal to the Commission to enforce. Do you think they're not enforcing?
They are enforcing, but we see now a lot of decisions that have been taken in the month of October, and we need to also be clear. The guidelines are from last summer, so the Commission is definitely going forward. But I think everyone is really, in an urge to see the enforcement, and the processes are one, the fines are one, but what we want to see is safer social media in real life, in practice, and that the parents can say, okay, this is an account that is good for my child, and no worries. And we only want to put actually accounts that are harmful, or that the Commission said they're not following the rules, because indeed a child has also a right to communicate with his friends or to have access to information. So I think we're going forward, but we're not seeing the result yet on the social media platforms.
But then
enough. There are some like TikTok Lite. It has been removed, so there are some successes. So there are definitely some. And I always say also in the debate in Flanders, there is enforcement. There are the most addictive platforms have been removed, like TikTok Lite, but we're not there yet.
But these things, of course, do take time, and even a ban. We had the results from Australia. They implemented, I think it was December 10th, 2025, and it's not working quite yet, right? So an age-related restriction also takes some time, right? And then if we have the Commission enforcing, and here I invite you to perhaps speculate, if you're enforcing through the DSA, then you would need to find cases that are cross-border that have to do with VLOBs, like send an RFI, start infringement procedures, and then get the platforms to comply like way down the line, which would also take a lot of time, right?
Enforcement takes time, absolutely. Especially enforcement you do properly and well-reasoned and robust that you don't want to lose in court. Takes time. You need to collect the evidence, you need to build a case. But the two things I would like to say in that respect. One is any new rules will take time until they become new rules, and then will take time until they are enforced. You don't just by overnight introducing age-related restrictions get rid of all the ages you want to get rid of. So don't forget this. So if you compare, DSA enforcement versus like having new rules, there is a lead-up time for the new rules, and then there's enforcement time for the new rules as well.
Definitely.
So I think in terms of speed, the DSA has the advantages already in place, and we have now gathered a lot of enforcement experience and make the process quicker now as well. I mean, I'm the first one who admits that when the DSA came to enforce, we had to build capacity, we had to build experience, we had to build understanding of how the platforms work. It pays off now. I always say 2026 is the year of enforcement. And you see that we started off in February with TikTok, and then last week Meta, and there are more cases on protection of minors in the pipeline. The other point I wanted to make, it's not just the Commission. It was mentioned, it's 28. 28.1 applies to all online platforms. It means all the national authorities can enforce this too, and they do that. So the Dutch have a case, for example, against Roblox, where they look very closely in how this affects children and what the risks are and how the platform does or does not address those risks efficiently. And we have, under the DSA board, a working group 6 that I chair, where all the national regulators come together, and we meet once a month, and we really have an implementation plan for the guidelines. Because I agree, we adopted the guidelines in July. We bought the industry some time in the whole social media ban, I say now, debate that they didn't use, I must say. I think if we had seen last year, after the adoption of the guidelines, immediate changes by the platforms. I mean, the platforms have every opportunity to make those changes themselves. It doesn't require always enforcement. If we had seen the changes last year, I bet the debate nowadays on a possible ban, yes or no, would be a different one.
And what do you think we can expect from the review of the guidelines that's coming up? Any little hints?
Yeah, so in the guidelines themselves, we set ourselves the target that after a year, we will review them, so in July. If you follow closely, the Cyberbullying Action Plan already has some homework for us to do, where we say this is something that we would consider in the review of the guidelines. Of course, now with the panel recommendations being due in July, this works timing-wise perfectly, because then we can take those, if there's anything for the guidelines to be done, also into account. And then I think the technology, the environment has moved a lot. So not just our enforcement experience that we can feed into making it more concrete, but also the technology has evolved, even since last July, both in terms of the technology to police it, so age verification technology, but also generative AI. The debate nowadays, the AI companions is a completely different one than it was, not completely, but a very much advanced one than it was last year.
So should we expect the guidelines to say no AI companions for under 18s?
We have just begun conceptualizing the review, so I can't give you any, like what's in there, we'll see.
Okay, I am always very curious to know in advance. Sonia, you wanted to also comment on something?
Yes, I wanted to reflect on the fact that it seems like we're facing a very simple solution, which is a ban, or a very complex solution, which is to implement Article 28 and its guidelines and all the other provisions of the DSA and so forth. And I want to suggest that this is a false comparison between simple and complex. So both of these policies, whichever is decided, depend crucially on two things. One is effective enforcement by the Commission, as we've just heard, and the other is effective identification of who is the child to be banned or to receive the age-appropriate services. And if we can manage, and these are two super technically complicated and legally complicated provisions. But if we can manage them, if we can identify the child and then enforce that the companies provide for them appropriately, why would we go for the simple solution of just banning children from a digital world, and why would we not then implement the thoughtful, child rights respecting, more nuanced solution, which would be better for children and for everybody? And just as a rider, I don't know if we're coming onto this, but the ban sounds simple and it isn't, because no one has yet said, apart from Australia, which has got it wrong, what will we ban, which services, how will we ban them, what will we provide for children when we have banned them, how will we even know if we have banned them, and what about the children who find the workarounds, aren't they even more at risk? So it's not the simple route that it seems like.
Yes, Minister, I think the point about privacy is very important, and the thing is that to verify who is a kid, you also need to verify who is an adult. So presumably we would all be required to verify our age when interacting with online services. And I wonder, how do you think about that, and how do you think that the public will take that?
That's a very good question, a very hard question, and the control, or the efficient control, or the private, taking privacy into account, being proportionate and not controlling everyone, but being proportionate, and also take into account that we don't want all our data collected, so to have a data minimization. That are the principles that are put forward, but in reality, it's not such easy thing to do. We have also a big debate within Belgium about age verification, but in one of the ministers' views, it's more like an identification. And for me, it's difficult that you want to say we want to protect the minors, but we also going to ask the ID of the parents, and we are going to ask the ID of the grandparents, because we want to protect the minors. And because if you're going to ask an ID or an identification of the whole population to have access to social media, it's actually a fundamental shift in how social media works. And that needs a real profound debate on public debate on, do we want this? Huh? I'm not convinced that I want that, but so you have to have, and there I do believe, and Martin also said, technology is also evolving very swiftly. I think there are some countries, I think it's California, who's looking at the age on the phone, or you have different models, but there we need to keep in mind it must be as privacy friendly as possible, it must be proportionate, and it must with not too much data collection, and that are the principles that we put forward, but it's not easy. It's correct. It's not an easy debate.
But then, how do you, if you don't want everyone to identify themselves, how would you enforce it?
I don't think we, as a member state, our decree, we try to fit in the legal framework of the European Commission. So we are following also the principles that the Commission is putting forward, and the enforcement of the large platforms is done by the Commission. Of course, also our national regulator can also do its work. But I don't think the member states can decide, and Martin can say if it's not, but can decide on what technology a platform should use. That it's not up to Flanders to say you need to use It's Me or this app or age verification tool. I don't think it's that we have that competence within the framework. So what we did is indeed say, okay, the age must be controlled, but within the framework the European Union puts forward.
Yes, Martin.
Just want to say, I warn a bit against mixing identification with verification. Yeah. There is a very, very huge difference. Identification checks the identity of a person, and then we come to debates about anonymity in the internet. No one, at least at the moment in the debates I'm following, is asking for identification. The only thing we're saying is in certain circumstances when the risks are so high that you want to be absolutely sure of the age of someone, you have an age verification, which is a completely anonymous age signal that I'm above a certain age, be it 16 or 18 or whatever the age gate is. It doesn't reveal anything about me as a person, about my identity, about anything. I'm not trackable, there's no profiling possibility. Yes. It's simply the age signal that I'm old enough to access this service safely. And then because you ask everyone, would have to do this? Yes, I think as a society we need to make a decision. Is this a good? Is the safety of our children a high enough good that we all play a part? And yes, even if in my age and I'm above 18, I can reveal here. I would have to show that when I want to access a service that is restricted for adults.
That's restricted for adults, yeah.
Yeah, or restricted for if whatever age gate is there.
But what if the age gates don't work? I mean, when we had the presentation about your wallet blueprint, the wallet that's an app that's not an app, we were told by Commission officials that it would be bypassed with VPNs. And I think also the experience of Australia is that it is very easily bypassed. So the question of proportionality is perhaps not even fair if those measures don't work.
I mean, most laws are circumventable, and doesn't mean you shouldn't have them. I mean, if you really want, there are ways of kind of circumventing certain things. I think the solution that we are offering now to be kind of rolled out in the EU is a very good tool, a privacy-preserving tool that will help you to get a good idea of how old a user is and then design your service around it. And I think I'm with Sonja there. I think we should reflect this. It gives an age signal, a reliable age signal to the service so that the service can design the way it's offering the service to the user's age.
Yes, I will say actually the Greek government, who is one of the front runners in age verification, is also talking about ending online anonymity forever, perhaps somewhat separately, but just to point out that it is part of the discussion. Yes, Sonja, I think we have time for a bit
I was
more.
just going to reflect. The evidence actually is that most people don't turn to a VPN. I think in Australia, also in Britain, we just implemented 18 plus for adult content, for pornography. There was a little flurry in turning to VPNs, and not so much, mainly from adults, not really from children. And that makes me think we are also trying to bring out a kind of cultural shift, and that's something else we want. Because even if we made social media and gaming completely safe and completely wonderful, we still don't want, I think, children on it 24/7. You know, we still would like a world in which they are not held to it through addictive capacities or addictive features, and we want them to be doing other things as well. So I think I do agree that some of these regulations have a kind of cultural signaling function in that they change or invite the population to rethink what the norm is. And they are rethinking what is the norm of what should children be doing, which actually takes us to some much bigger questions about what we want childhood to look like.
And back on the question of the wallets and the age verification, I mean, when the wallet was announced, we were told it's technically ready. Then turned out there were some issues with it, which have now been patched, allegedly. Do you think that this creates an issue of trust? And would this affect, for example, your decision in using the Commission's blueprints?
Well, the fact that if it's hacked easily, it's definitely a problem for trust. And that's for sure. Of course, there are also, like, I think you're working on it, I guess. I think we'll have to follow it very closely on what technology is best and which one is most proportionate. And I think we should do that also within the European framework. We're not going to do it on our own. I want to have a set, I think the age limit, or it's something more cultural that you can decide more, but like then the technology on how to enforce, I think that is something we should see on a European level, and there we are following closely what is going on with the verification, because there, we are still debating on whether it's proportionate or not to ask also the age of the grandparents if you want to tackle a problem for minors. And so these debates are going on, and I think it's very important that we continue to see what the technology brings and how we go forward with this.
And one last question for Martin. How does the panel actually work? Because there's tons of experts that are involved in this. Who's going to actually draft this recommendation?
Good question. So the president has appointed two co-chairs, Professor Jörg Fegert and Maria Melchior from the French Institute for Health. Not sure. They are in charge of the entire process. And then for each of the meetings, depending on the agenda and the topics that are discussed, there is a select group of experts joining for that specific debate that are then inputting not just in the meeting, but we also prepare documents around it, and then you get chances as an expert to comment on these documents and give your input. This group of experts in the room for a meeting, that changes with each meeting depending on the topics that are discussed. And then in the end, the co-chairs are responsible for drafting the report of recommendations to the president and the College of Commissioners, with the input, of course, of the experts that were involved.
That's very clear. Thank you so much, everyone. Martin, Sonja, Schulte. Up next, we have Lawrence Rulers, who will close day 2. Thank you for being here, and see you at drinks.
Thank you.